Within the field of neuro-linguistic programming, we hear everything and nothing about what is possible and what is impossible. If you have ever tried to use NLP to seduce a girl you liked and it didn't work well, or if you have never tried it yet because you're still confused about how it works, then we are going to use this video to dive into what you need to know and what is kind of irrelevant from the field of NLP to that extent. The first misconception I would like to address is the whole topic of building rapport. Like you have to pace the person so that the person trusts you more and then they share more stuff about them. Yes, there is a way to do that in the context of dating, but it is kind of different, I think, from the general context of therapy in which NLP is being taught. Basically, I tend to think that ultimately women choose men. If she doesn't want you in her bed, hardly any chance you are going to get there anyway. So many guys just stay into the frame of having to prove something to her, and they try to make her comfortable and to pace her gestures, her facial expression, to try to get her similar to how they feel. But it won't work if you don't have a strong intent in mind of where you are going to lead her. The concept of building rapport into seduction works more in terms of interrupting her state and leading her state while maintaining rapport, rather than just doing it a therapeutic way where you just listen about her for hours and hours and hours and then hope she will like you. Doesn't work that way. So the first technique we are going to elaborate on is state escalation. You start from the get-go when you meet a girl you like, you start from the get-go with not all the things you want to say because it is going to be aleatory, random. However, you start with a clear direction for which states you want her to get through in your presence. Maybe some of those states won't happen on the first time you meet her. Fine, it's okay. Sometimes it will happen even faster than you think, and it is about maintaining the frame within your own decisions. Where do you want to lead that conversation and how do you get her there? Because most guys, again, just communicate with zero outcome in mind. They just randomly fluff talk for hours and they never really get past the phase of, yeah, we have a good conversation. And then what? So leading in terms of states mean knowing ahead of time where do you want to lead her. Usually what I use from my experience, and you can use other states than those ones, I tend to use a kind of curiosity, enhancing the state of curiosity of intrigue inside her by whatever means I can. I might point out something interesting I did today or something curious about what she's wearing today, anything that belongs to the state of curiosity. That is the first state I want to get her mind into so that I am catching her attention. Because in most cases, she is doing many different things. She might not be in the mood to listen to anything you say at this moment. First, we need to catch the attention. Then what I tend to do, that many guys have trouble doing because they only think about sex and they don't think about the intermediate step that most women need, it is the comfort, the trust, the connection, where the more traditional building rapport techniques might apply more indeed, because there you intend to share some personal things about you and fish for some personal things about her, creating a real connection as if it was someone who already trusts you and that you already trust. However, you don't stay there either. You aim at drifting, then at heading toward a more sexual state, and more specifically sexual anticipation, which is different from sexual desire, or maybe related, but by anticipation I mean when she or you, mostly she, wants it, but she can't get it. It is about the whole concept of push and pull. You induce something and then you take it back. Not in a narcissistic way, just slightly bits of challenge, so that she can see that she can get you, but it's not going to be that easy either. And communicating with those states in mind really clarifies everything that's happening in the conversation, both for what should you say next and how to interpret what she's saying or doing. Because anything she says, anything she does, you can reinterpret it based on those states. For the classical example is if she's asking anything personal about you and saying something like, "Whoa, wait a minute, I'm not going to sleep with you tonight, please hang on." That is obviously not what she meant, but the point of saying that means in your head you already know you are heading toward sexual anticipation later in the conversation. Maybe she's not going to grab the hook at the moment you say that, but you start framing her mind in that direction. Then, of course, maybe it's not going to work the first time you try. Maybe some women are just not in the mood that day, whatever. At least communicating with a strong intent in mind, first of all, makes you a better communicator into every aspect of your life. It makes you more confident, appearing more confident and becoming more confident, because it takes some balls sometimes to pull that with somebody who might not really be interested. So it really triggers more challenge inside yourself to communicate in that way, and it is easier to get her to like you if you know where you are going in the conversation than if you are just passive and waiting for her approval in one way or another before doing anything. Technique number 2, which is going to relate more to the second phase of that model, the comfort, trust, connection phase, because quite often I see guys who end up being okay, they end up being good at inducing some sexual jokes, and they can, pump up the temperature, pump up the tension into conversation. But since they did not build any connection, any emotional connection before that, she might regret or just say, I'm not really sure about that. She will, kind of push away at the end. If you kind of get isolated, the both of you, and something might happen, she might kind of push away because there is not enough trust, enough emotional connection built up. And luckily I happen to be much more at ease with emotional connections than the sexual thing that I had a lot of trouble to pull out in the beginning. Now it's okay, but in the beginning I had to work my mind through why do I put so much pressure on sex and all those things. But the emotional thing was pretty natural for me, not sure why. So I tend to use the us against the world frame, at least most of the time. And in the beginning, what I was aiming for was finding anything in the conversation that could make it appear as we are together because we have the same opinions or values about something, or we like the same thing, whatever. Using that to build a frame of we are the same, we think the same, those people don't think like us, which doesn't mean they are enemies or anything, just we know we are special, you and I, together. To that extent, some language patterns that are pretty useful are if I can share something personal with you. Can I share something personal with you? And then, this is obviously catching her attention a lot, and then I would share something indeed personal about myself. Obviously, the goal is not to lie, it is to share something legitimate. When I use that line, I would always take something personal about my childhood, not like any deep trauma, but something personal or something I like, but that people would laugh at me if I was telling them, and sharing that. Opening the vulnerabilities was encouraging her to share about her vulnerabilities too, or at least to trust me more, because very few guys do that in the beginning. Very few guys open up emotionally and talk about personal stuff about them. Very, very seldom do they ever do that. So by doing that, I was definitely differentiating myself in her head from most of the guys who could approach her that night or whatever. I was building a frame of we are definitely different because we talk about stuff deeper than most people talk about in the beginning. Or another version of that language pattern was, I normally don't talk about that, but you seem like someone I can trust. Are you? Okay, so what I wanted to tell you is, and then, obviously now I'm exaggerating, but then I would share something indeed personal. The big rule about sharing vulnerabilities to get her more comfortable around you, second technique, the big rule though, in that frame is to only talk about personal things or vulnerable things that you have dealt with. If it is like a trauma you're still suffering from, obviously don't talk about that to her, at least not in the beginning. Go to a therapist, that is the point. Whenever it is something though that you have maybe suffered from or something that was kind of difficult in your life and it is handled by now, you have recovered from this, then women love to hear about that. They love to hear about men's vulnerabilities and men being honest about it. Because they are so usually pissed off or just annoyed by guys who pretend they are perfect when they know they're not. Definitely. So you sharing something personal about you, something that is over by now, you have recovered, but something personal, first of all, it is definitely helping the conversation to become much more intimate, and becoming much more intimate within the frames women naturally like to be into. They like to talk about emotions, feelings. I know guys hate that, but you can become the difference and talk about at least one thing emotional about your life, about yourself, which will encourage her to connect much more with you. And from there, when anything sexual happens, she will definitely feel better about it, because there has been an emotional connection before the sex happens. And finally, technique number 3 is to use her buzzwords, mostly about sexual feelings. It can be about anything, but I tend to use that more in the last phase of the interaction. So buzzwords are any self-anchored words. So when we talk about anchoring, most guys think about anchoring by touching her shoulder when she thinks about her ex-boyfriend or like her boyfriend, whatever, so that she associates the feelings of love to him. First of all, that is kind of manipulative, and even without that, that doesn't really work that much. Not that I have ever tried, but maybe I did eventually. I don't know. And it doesn't really work. Definitely not. So it is not like a machine you can just press like this that will fall in love for you. That doesn't work like this. However, if you use the words that she has already anchored into her neurology, into her emotions, with very specific sensual states or even just emotional states of whatever kind, you use those exact same words, her personal anchors, and you use those words to describe anything about you or about your life or about somebody else you know of. You just use again the same words she has used to describe what happens when she feels great in a relationship, or the words she uses to describe whenever she does something she loves, like horse riding, or she loves swimming, whatever she likes doing. You listen for what kind of adjectives, verbs, nouns she is using to describe that. When I really push the bubble here, and when I use that in a sensual context, when we are already close to the bed or whatever, then let's say she says things like, whenever I'm feeling horny, or like when I'm losing my mind, I just get crazy when I am really with a guy I love and trust, I just get crazy with him in bed. Something I heard one time. Or, oh, this one was something I heard recently. I took the lead sexually in the bed. That's a girl I met recently. Once she felt more comfortable and announced she had had a threesome at some point in her life. She told me, not in big details, but she told me briefly about it. And she said the thing that was shocking for the guys I was with was that I took the lead in bed. Okay, took the lead in bed. Now I remember, at this point it is automatic for me, I just remember the words she used, and I use the same exact words again when I'm gonna tell about some similar story of mine. And I said something like, and then at this moment, when we looked into each other's eyes, I really made up my mind, I took the lead, and I led her into that room. I could see at this moment when I said that, she took a deep breath. So, okay, there is a response. I use the words she used. I see a non-verbal response. Something is happening. Then some annoying guy appeared in the party and kind of ruined that interaction. But luckily, I still have her number. But that is just to say, whenever you use the words and the anchors she has already built up in her mind, in her memories, then the conversation is going to escalate much more smoothly than if you try to plant a new anchor from scratch that she has never used before. That can be done, but that is unlikely that is less likely to work compared to if you use the encores she has already built up, as we all do, because we all associate songs to feelings we love. We all associate some pictures in our room somewhere maybe to memories we have lived. When you use the encores she already has, everything is going to be easier in the conversation. And this process is basically what everyone is going to do naturally when they start falling in love or when they really connect. For example, when this is the girl who really likes you, if she's the one who likes you, you can be sure she's going to do everything she can to build rapport with you. No questions about that. She's going to change her behavior, adapt her voice tonality. All of those things are things we all do naturally. The only thing neuro-linguistic programming has done was putting a name on it. That's all. But we all do those things naturally when we really connect with somebody. And the fact of knowing consciously those techniques will make you a better communicator, because most people are just passive in their interactions and they constantly wait for others to take decisions for them. From there, you are the one taking the decision for what you want. And obviously, if she doesn't want it, fine, you just talk to somebody else. That is completely okay. The point is to still communicate with an intent in mind to start becoming the one who leads the interaction instead of the one waiting for others to give you something. And that was all for those few NLP techniques to use in seduction. You can find down below a manual called The 7 Steps to Master Sleight of Mouth, within which you have one example of how to use one of those patterns in a dating context, when she's kind of doing a shit testing and trying to test you to see how strong or how fragile you are. And you will find many other ways to communicate whenever you want to change beliefs, whenever you want to persuade somebody or influence thoughts in unconventional ways. That is down below, and I say you thanks a lot for watching. I hope I will see you soon in the next video. Waiting for that, practice your skills, I'm watching you, and thank you, goodbye.